Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Creating Multiplayer Games and Simulations with Forio Epicenter. My name is Michael Bean, and in the next hour, we're going to be building a multiplayer simulation, and I'm going to teach you how to do so. I'm going to start today by introducing Forio Epicenter. That's our platform for building single-player and multiplayer simulations and other kinds of tools. Then I'm going to show you what a finished multiplayer simulation looks like. We're going to do a little demo. And then we're going to get into the kind of the heart of the webinar today, which is how to build a multiplayer simulation. A fun part of this is actually building the model and kind of thinking through the problem of how do you build a competitive multiplayer model or a collaborative multiplayer model for that matter. So we're going to go into a little bit about how to do that. Then we're going to show you how to build a multiplayer user interface. This is what the end users or the students or learners would see when they're interacting with the game or the simulation. For multiplayer games, you need to have users and groups. You need to have people log in, so they're representing the different companies, for example, or different organizations or different people or something. And so in order to get that to work, you need to create groups or essentially teams and worlds that people can play in, and end users who are parts of those worlds. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And as a last bit, I'll show a little bit around how to create a multiplayer facilitator interface. At the end of the webinar today, we're going to go through resources to help you get started, and we'll also leave some time for next steps and questions at the end. So Epicenter, this is the platform we're going to be using today, is a platform for both authoring multiplayer simulations as we're building today and also hosting them. So it manages the hosting. The hosting can get complicated for multiplayer games because, imagine you have situations where you maybe have people who play, let's imagine a company or a business game. You might have different people playing different roles, like maybe, vice president of finance, vice president of marketing, et cetera, in a game. And so they're playing different roles within a team. Then there might be different teams within the same world. So you might have multiple teams within a world, and a world is defined by, if one person makes a decision or does something, it affects the other players in that world, right? So you can have multiple worlds though within a class or within a workshop or something like that. So you might have, you might have 50 people in your workshop, and you might divide it up into 5 worlds, and each of those worlds are kind of operating independently, and all 10 people in each of those 5 worlds, are making decisions and affecting each other in there, either again competitive or collaboratively. And then in addition, there's another level above that, which is there could be multiple classes going on around the physical world simultaneously, and it can handle kind of all of that complexity. So that does the hosting side of things, but the other thing you can use the platform for is actually authoring and building these simulations. So Epicenter can host and you can use it to build interfaces to simulations, statistical analyses, machine learning optimization, and other things. It accepts a bunch of different languages. For this audience, before the webinar today, I was looking to see who's attending, and I see some familiar names. I don't know all of you, but what I saw there are kind of 2 audiences here in terms of how to build the model for this. There's a group of people who are familiar with Vensim. I think that's kind of a big group. And then another group of Excel users. There were some other folks too that are using other tools like PowerSim and so forth, but those were the 2 primary ones. What I've decided to do for today is to show how to build the multiplayer model with Excel. It's actually very similar for Vensim, but the reason I'm doing that is next week we're in Albuquerque at the System Dynamics Conference, which is a simulation conference. And during that, on Thursday, we're going to be doing actually 3 workshops, I guess. We're doing one with John Sturman, so the new simulation from MIT around project management. And then we're doing a kind of intro to interactive simulations. And then at the end of the day on Thursday, we're doing multiplayer games. And in that one, we'll use Vensim primarily. So if you happen to be, I know a lot of Vensim users are attending that conference. So if you're attending, then you want to learn more about this kind of from the Vensim perspective, you can join that. Although I think there's a lot of things that are going to be interesting today as well, even though we're going to be using that Excel model for our workshop today. In addition to different languages, there's also different approaches for building simulations. And one of them is represented by this fellow who's maybe someone who's working on his own, building a model. So you could have someone who's an author who's working on her or his own, putting something together. And they're doing all the pieces. They're both building the model and they're building the interface and they're creating the groups and things like that. So that's one kind of audience or sort of author for the platform. And in addition, the platform can support teams of people who are working together to create models. So we're going to today focus in on this style of author, someone who's working on their own. But I do want to point out that the capabilities for doing more sophisticated things are available within the platform. So let's start off by taking a look at a running simulation, just to give you a little bit of sense for what a finished multiplayer simulation looks like. Then we'll kind of get into building one. This is a multiplayer game. It's a marketing simulation around surgical robotics that Harvard Business Publishing released last year, and it has 4 different roles for logging into it. So there's 4 different players within the world, and then there's also a facilitator page. So let me log in first as a facilitator. And when you're logged in, let me just go to some of the screens here. You can have user uploads. So I can upload end users to the simulation that would be available for playing the game. I can then manage those users and assign them roles. So you can see here there's the roles of Lamar, Ada Robotics, Telcus, and Metabot. All 4 of those are different competitors within this world. They're assigned to group 1, and you can see, they're kind of assigned here. I don't know why Forio user 4 is in first, but in any case, they're kind of scattered around there. So they're all in a single world. And then we also have the simulation setup where we can set up a new run and kind of open the simulation up. So what I'm going to do now is log in, and I'm using this feature, by the way. It's super handy for multiplayer simulation work that you might be doing, which is in Chrome, it has this people feature, and you can log in with completely separate sessions using different people or different people within your browser. So I have person 1 set up here as one browser instance, and a completely separate browser instance set up at person 2, and so forth. And what that lets me do is run, in this case, all 4 roles in my multiplayer simulation game, and also the facilitator page as a 5th position, and look at it all simultaneously. So here I'm logging in as user 1, and I'll just keep going here. Here's user 2, I'm going to log in as. Here's user 3, user 4, and then I'm going to go back now to the facilitator, which is is the 5th one here. And you can see now it says 4 students are registered, 4 students are assigned. I'm going to set up a new run, which is reset the current run. This particular simulation has timer in it, which is probably, and now we're going to open the simulation for play. So now the simulation will be open for the players to play the sim. So now the simulation has advanced. I'm playing as Ada here, and I get a dashboard of results. I can kind of see how we're doing overall. This simulation is set up so everybody's kind of balanced at the beginning, where market share is identical. I can see different reports that show, like this radar chart, kind of how we're performing and how market share is going and things, and other features as well. Then I can do things like set the price of my product. So I'll just change the price here. And oops, I put one too many digits in there. I'm gonna, I can change my investments in various ways. I can decide kind of how other kinds of decisions that are based on radio buttons here and so forth. And then I can set some goals and submit. So now I'm submitting for the first user, but the simulation is still in year 1. So I'm going to go ahead and rapidly do the same. I'm just going to move some things around for player 2. And submit. Still in year 1, as you can see. Go to player 3 here, and submit. And obviously I'm not being careful here about the decisions that I'm making, but you get a little bit of sense of how this works, hopefully. And now player 4, make some decisions here and submit. Okay, so now I'm submitting for player 4. This is the last player to submit, right? So I've submitted 1 through 3, and player 4 has not yet submitted, but when player 4 is now going to submit, the simulation will automatically advance from year 1 to year 2. Let's watch that. Here we go. Okay, so now we're in year 2. It says simulation has advanced to year 2, and I see now the results for year 2. And now if I go back and look at my reports, for example, my market share report, I can see, how is market share changing, over the simulation. I can animate that, and I can see market share, increased a lot for ADA. I guess ADA I did the right decisions for, and Lamar I did the worst job. So you get a little bit of a sense for how that works. And then, on the facilitator screen, I get a little bit of background information about what's going on in terms of class results and things like that as the simulation progresses. So that's what a multiplayer simulation looks like. And what you can see here is there's this ability. Now this is another player, but I get to see these different reports. Some of the reports show unique information to me, and other reports are going to show information that's available to all players. Like everybody's getting this market share report, and they're just kind of getting a breakdown of how this all works. So it gives you a little bit of a sense for how these come together. Again, multiple views for the player, and then usually a facilitator section where the facilitator can manage all of that together. All right. Now we're going to get into building this ourselves, and building a multiplayer simulation. There's really 4 parts to this. The first part of it is to build a multiplayer model, and then build a multiplayer user interface, and then create groups and users. Once we reach the end of that, we'll be able to run it. So we'll be able to take a look at it. But then the last thing I want to do is quickly at the end is show how to build a multiplayer facilitator interface like we saw a moment ago for this last simulation. So we're going to cover all that today. And I want to dig into a little bit more detail on the building of the multiplayer model, because there's definitely some trickiness to building a proper multiplayer model. And I think for you Vensim users, you're used to using subscripts or arrays for handling that, and I think that works super well. It's not as obvious in Excel, because Excel, there are actually sort of new features in Excel that allow for subscripts and things like that, but within Excel in general, it's sort of hard to figure out how to do the same thing. So I'm going to show you how to do that today during this webinar. All right, so here is a multiplayer. Well, actually, currently it's not multiplayer. It's a single player Excel spreadsheet that I've set up to kind of show this example and how we would build multiplayer out of the single player here. And what you can see here is I've got this industry demand. And by the way, what I'm going to do is a kind of a cover story about electric bicycles. So we're kind of building this electric bicycle company, and I'm going to show details about how this electric bicycle company works. And what we have here is some industry demand, and you can see the industry demand is growing over time. And the way that's done is it's just growing. You can see here times 1.05, so it's growing by 5% per year over time here in the model. That's what we're showing here. The int here is wrapping that, just indicating that we want it to be an integer. So we don't want to have like half a product that's sold per year or something like that. And then we have our price decision. And the way this works is if I change my price, let's say here in period 2, I change my price from 1,500 to 500. I don't actually want it to take effect in the period that I'm currently looking at, because that would instantaneously change results in the sim. So what I really want it to do is to change next year's value. So I've entered 500 here. What you can see is it affects the price in the next time period. And all that's doing here in Excel is this price is referencing E7, which is this cell, right? So it's this one references this cell, and as a consequence, it delays it by 1 time period. Vensim has some built-in capabilities for handling this, but in Excel it doesn't, so this is kind of the way we handle this. And then this set here then is going to affect sort of the price over time. You can see, the profit in, the sales numbers and things like that here are changing, partly as a consequence of that price decision here. So let me go ahead and return that to the way it was. I'll just copy this one over. So now we're back to the regular version. And then we have these cells that I've highlighted in yellow. And the reason I did that is because I want to have something in there to kind of start, but these actually need to be changed for when we have a multiplayer game. We're going to do that in a minute. And the rest of this is pretty straightforward. So sales is simply industry demand times market share. So that's all that's calculating. Revenue is simply sales times price. Variable costs are equal to the sales times a variable cost number, which I decided was $1,000 per bicycle in this one. And then there's some fixed costs, and then there's total costs, and then we have profit. and then cumulative profit at the end. And cumulative profit is simply the previous sell plus the current value. So you can see here it's $4 million profit for the 0 year, and these two match because there's no profit prior to this, right? But for the next year, then cumulative profit is 4 million plus 4,250,000, which is 8,250,000, and it kind of grows from there. And we can maybe use that as kind of a score in this game if we want to. Okay, so now we have the simulation set up so that it's working for a single player, and the challenge we have for a multiplayer game is how we're going to do this for multiple players. And there's a little technique that I like to do for doing this, and what I like to do with it is simply start by moving this group over for these price decisions, and then use this function that's available in Excel called concatenate. Probably some of you have used this before, but oops, let me try that again. And concatenate lets you concatenate different text. So we're going to use that in a second here. What I want to do is put the name of the player up here. I'm going to put A up here. And then I'm going to do equal concatenate. And then I'm going to say, the first thing I was to do price decision, and then comma, and then I put in the next thing I want to concatenate, next bit of text I want to concatenate. I just want a space in there. So I'll do that. So quote, space, quote, then comma, and then that field above. So if I do that, I get price decision A. And that's kind of what I want for a player A in this game. And then I'm going to freeze it by putting a $sign in there so it doesn't move. And if I copy that down, and that's for that, for that last bit, which is the A in there. Now, if I copy that down, I get all my players, right? So that's good. So now I can take this and it's say, I don't know, let's do a 3-player game. So I've got A, B, but I ultimately have A, B, and C. And I want to change this to B here. And then I'm going to change this here from B6 to B19, it looks like. There we go. And then I want to copy this down again. Oops. There we go. And then this one, of course, is going to be C. And again, I want to change this from B6 to B33, it looks like. I should move this over a little bit. Oops, I did that wrong. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so I messed this up. Let's do this. B33. Oh, B32. I see, I'm creating a circular reference. Okay. Yeah, okay, let's do that one last time. B32. All right, there we go, price decision C, and we have that now in place. So now we've got our 3 competitors, and what we need to do next is work out the, we don't actually have a circular reference anymore. We need to work out the attractiveness function for these competitors. And we're doing a pricing model right now, so the idea is that we're going to have the decision that our customers make on purchasing an electric bicycle is purely based on price, which is probably very unrealistic, but that's where we're going to start for today. And so what we need to do is build an attractiveness function based on price. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to now look at the attractiveness, the prices of the 3 competitors, find the lowest one, and then look at how our product is priced relative to that. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say equal min. So I want to find the minimum price of A or B or C. And then I want to divide that by the price of A. Okay, so we're going to start with that. And I'm going to just copy this across here. And then I can copy, and the other thing I need to do here, I guess, is, oops, I didn't do that right. Let me see here. Oh, did I already, okay, let's try it. Okay, so here we go. So price of A. So I'm going to copy this across. And then one thing I need to do here is also indicate that this shouldn't move around from as I move it down. So I'm going to do this here, and this here, and that's going to keep it from moving as I copy these cells down. Okay, so let me go ahead and paste that here, and then paste it here. And now I need to figure out what my market share is going to be based on that attractiveness function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the market share for my product is going to be equal to the attractiveness of A divided by the attractiveness of all the other products in the market. So I'm going to do this one divided by, excuse me, the sum of A or B or C here. Okay. And you can see that came out to 33%, which looks like a reasonable starting point. I'm going to freeze these by using that $ in there. And now I've got that. I can copy that across now. And let me paste that in here. And now I've got a function that's going to work, and I can try this out. And this is a good idea when you're building models where you need to test it as you're kind of going along to make sure you've done it correctly. So let's imagine in year 1 here, I reduced my price. My expectation is that this number should be above 33% for the next year. So let me go ahead and try that out. I'm going to put a low price in, which I should see a big market share increase here. And oh, I did that wrong. I did it in the price. I have to do it in price decision here. So let's put it here. And there I see it jumped up to 60%. Now I'm losing money by doing that because I'm pricing too low. But you did see, I do see that the market share went up, and the corresponding market shares for the other competitors went down. So that seems like that's working pretty well as a starting point here. There's another question here that's kind of worth asking, which is, does it make sense to have this market share kind of pop up? This is a 60% market share with a decrease in price from $1,500 to $500 reasonable. And we can adjust for that if we want by creating something called price sensitivity. So let me add that into my model just to make it a little bit more realistic. And I'm going to start this off at 1. And I'll show you how that works here. What I can do is change the attractiveness here, kind of wrap this in this function in some parens, and then say to the power of my price sensitivity. And I'm going to put the $ in to freeze that in that cell as well. And now if I kind of copy that across and then paste this down here and here, I can adjust the price sensitivity of my model. So here it went to 60%. If I increase the sensitivity to 2, you can see now what happens is my market share went up to 82%, and the other ones went down. So that's maybe it's more sensitive. If I put it to 5, I get 99% and almost nothing for the other competitors. And if I try the reverse, I put 0 in, the price has no impact. So that works pretty well. That's a good function for determining the attractiveness, and it seems like it's doing what I want. And right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in at 2, because I think that if you drop the price from $1,500 down to $500, you get most of the market share, but not all of it. So that's kind of how we're going to run this for today. And by the way, this is something that would be, to get this correct for a real business, you could tune the model by playing with that price sensitivity and making it match up with historical results. Okay, so we're almost done with our model. And the next step we need to do is to prepare it so that we can use it in the Epicenter interface. And the way I'm going to do that is by naming these ranges so that Epicenter will recognize the range names in here. And these are already set up with A, B, and C, as we see. And now I'm going to do is go to Insert, Name, Create, and base it on the left column. And what that does is it names these ranges, and it just makes it easier to refer to it. So here we see price decision A. And actually, one other thing I would need to do here is fix a little experiment I did. So it goes back to 33%. So we got these all named here. So you can, again, this one is named price decision A, cumulative profit down here is named cumulative profit, etc. And I need to do the same thing for these other ones. Let me go ahead and do that. So I'll do Insert, Name, Create, left column. So these now are named, and then we need to do it with this one. Insert, Name, Create. And you can see how, this would be a fine technique for creating 2 to 10 player simulation. It would not be too bad here. So I need to also do it for this one because I want to have time and industry demand be something in there that I can refer to. So do this with Create. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to add a column in for how far I want the simulation to step when the simulation is starting. So I'm going to add step in here, and that'll give me a little bit of history. I want to have one round of results before I start the game so you can see what's going on in the game. So we're going to do these, and then I'm going to do one more thing here. I do Insert, Name, Create, left column, and now these cells are named so you can see initial industry demand is named over here, price sensitivity is this cell, and step is this one. And that is it for my model. So let me go ahead and save this. And we're done with our model. We've done a little bit of testing on it. It seems okay. And we want to now take this model and import it into Forio Epicenter. So let's go into Epicenter here. And here I'm in a folder or in a project. This is a project that can have authenticated users in it. And so we're going to use that feature for this multiplayer game today. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. I'm going to call this the Multiplayer Electric Bike Company. There we go. All right, so I've got that as my name here. And I have 3 access levels. I have public, authenticated, and private. I need to have end users log in because I need to identify them by different roles. And so I need to use an authenticated account today for this access level. So I'll leave it at that. And that's important for multiplayer simulations. Then I'm going to go ahead and hit Create Project. And now I have a project created, but of course I have nothing in it, right? So if I go to the link and try to run it, there's nothing there. If I look at the model folder, it's empty. If I look at the interface folder, it's also empty. So the first step for me here really is to get the model that I created into Epicenter. And the way I do that is I go to the model folder here. Let me find my model that I just created. And this is just 2 minutes ago, I created this here. Let me go ahead and drag that into the folder. So now I have my multiplayer game uploaded, but I still don't have an interface. So my next step with this to create an interface is to use the interface builder. This isn't the only technique for building interfaces, but it's the simplest. So that's what we're going to be using today. And I go to the interface builder and it looks at the model that I just uploaded. And you have to upload a model before you use the interface builder, right? So you have to have a model in place so it can analyze it before proceeding with the interface builder. But I've just uploaded this Excel spreadsheet that I created. And it looks at it and says, well, you could build many different kinds of sims. Here are different kinds of interfaces. And obviously the one we want to do today is multiplayer. So let me click on multiplayer. And what it does is it automatically enables multiplayer features in my account because I chose multiplayer, and it's kind of telling me things that it's done to set up the multiplayer to get it to work. And I can later on, if I want to, I can go to project settings and adjust those, but that's good, just as a reminder. And then what I need to do is set up different roles for the players that I want to have in my game. And this technique also works with Vensim with like subscripts and things like that if you're using it that way. But going back to our Excel model, you can see the roles here are A for these, B for these, and C. And the way that Epicenter works is it looks at the end or the beginning of a variable or variable range like this, and it will try to see which, where it would be for creating these different subscripts. So we have A, B, and C for our list here. So let me go ahead and type this in. So I'm going to do A, comma, B, comma, C. Those are the names of the roles that I'm going to have in my game or my simulation. I'm going to continue, and now I have the interface open and ready to start. So let's go ahead and get going on that. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is set up the header and footer for the game. I'm going to go ahead and call this multiplayer. Let's just call it electric bike game. There we go. And I want to put an image in here for the header. I have an image that I've already kind of prepared for this, which is a little electric bike icon. So here it is. I'm going to just adjust it a little bit and hit OK. And I can select that icon here for it. So I've got that in place. And now if I go back to the intro page, I can see that icon kind of appearing here. So that's good. And now I can add in some extra text and say, welcome to the game. And I can do some other things here too. I have some text that I'm just going to throw in here quickly. That's not it. Let's see, here we go. So here's some text that I can add, kind of explains the game. And I can also add some media if I want to have a video and things like that. And I have a little video that I've got off of YouTube that talks about electric bicycles. So I'll throw this in here as well. There we go. Okay, so there's our video. So a good introduction to the page for kind of getting started and things like that. So from here, what I want to do is go to the dashboard. and I want to create some results that I want to share for each player. And what we're doing now is we don't want to go into where we're building different pages for every unique player, because that would be a huge amount of work and it would be hard to maintain for the simulation. And Epicenter has this technique that you can use for creating different pages based on the player that's currently selected. So let's take a look at that. So maybe one of the things I want to plot out here is sales over time. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to do, I'm going to select chart type. I'm going to select line chart. I'm going to do, let's say, sales up here. And then I'm going to select a data variable. And one of the variables I can select, if I type in sales, I can see quite a range of things that I could select for sales. There's just a huge list here of sales things. So I can do by user, by role, by A, B, or C, and full range into current step. And what I want to do here is sales user role for current step. And what that's going to do is show the sales by the role that's currently logged in until the current step. So that's kind of how I want it to work. And so if I'm logged in as A, it's going to show sales for A. It's logged in for B, it's going to show sales for B, etc. But for other charts, I might want to show all of them. I don't want to distinguish by the role. And a good example of that here is if I wanted to do, say, a pie chart of the market shares, for example. So let's do market share here. And for that, what I'm going to do is market share. I'm going to type in here, and it's looking inside the model to kind of find that. I could do market share user role, but I really don't want to do that. What I really want to do is show market share for all three competitors. So I'm going to do market share current step A, and then I'm going to do market share B current step, and then we'll add another one, which is going to be market share C current step. Okay, good. So we've got a couple of charts here for kind of plotting things out. And, you know, obviously we can extend this. If you're not familiar with Epicenter in the template tool, there's really a wide variety of features that are available. Like there's other pages that you can easily add here. So there's different output pages that are available. There's different input styles of pages. There's different combinations. There's you know, there's a lot of different pages that are available that you can select from, and you can even modify those and add to them and things like that by creating your own templates if you want to. So there's a lot of features around this, and there's other styles of designs. So here we have different styles of designs for the different tools. I'm going to leave these alone today, but there's some other ways of kind of modifying this and making this fancier, but this is kind of where we're going to start for today. And then I want to go to decisions here, and I want to be able to make decisions in my game. And you know what we're doing here is we're referencing the Excel spreadsheet where I have, you know, price decision A, B, and C. So here we see price decision A again. And what I want to do is set the decision type here. So I'm going to use a slider, kind of like what we saw in the marketing game that I showed at the beginning. I'm going to call this price, or you know, it could be byte price or something like that. And what I want to do is base this on price decision, which we have in the game, and I want to use it by user role for the current step. So if I do that, that's going to set that up, and I'm going to format it by currency. And I'll say the minimum is 1, and I think I set my bike price to 1,500. Let's confirm that. Yeah, so the price starts off at 1,500. Maybe I can go as high as $3,000, and you know, it will be in increments of 1 here. Okay, so I've got that set up. I've almost got a game complete here. The last step I need to do is when I click simulate, I don't want it to instantaneously run. You know, if you think about the example that I shared with you a moment ago, what happened is each person had to submit their decisions before the simulation would advance. And there's multiple sort of techniques for how to advance a simulation. Sometimes you can do it where the facilitator advances it. And you know, another one is this, what we call consensus decision, meaning everybody needs to submit before the simulation advances to the next round. So I'm going to go ahead and click on simulate. And then I can see different operations that are available. And then I'm going to do here is click on this piece that says require consensus. And what that's going to do is make it so that the all three players need to submit before the simulation advances. So I think we have enough to get started here. What I'm going to do now is to test the simulation, I want to create a group, which is really like a class or a workshop of end users, and then create a team within there that's going to be able to run this within a world. So let me go back to the project homepage. And then what I'm going to do is go to groups. And in groups, I'm able to create different classes. And because I just created this, this simulation, I have no groups available in it. It's empty right now. But if I go to over here on the right, I can click on Add Group. And then I can give the name of this. I'm going to say this is multiplayer webinar. And you know, if I add this, it also recognizes that it's going to be July 2019, because that's when I'm running this right now, obviously. And then it gives a start date, and also gives an expiration. So that means that after this date, end users will no longer be able to access the simulation. If you don't want them, you want them to access it forever, you can blank this out, but usually people want to have sort of an end date in here somewhere. Let me put one in, but not too close here. Let's see, we'll do it to, well, that's pretty good. The end of January of 2020. Okay, very good. And there's other limits we can set as well here. But anyway, so let me go ahead and create the group. And now we have a group that's available, but we have no end users within our group. And so what we need to do is create end users who are the players of this simulation. And we're going to need at least 3 people, because we've created a 3-player multiplayer game here. So let's go ahead and go to Add End Users. And there are multiple ways of getting end users into a simulation. We can add them individually, which works fine, but it's kind of a hassle sometimes for big classes. You know, if you have to do this 40 times or something like that. You can also have people self-register, and you can create these self-registration links where they, you know, where they click on this link and they put in their own email address and things like that to set it up. So that's another approach. But the approach we're going to use today is just upload multiple end users. And the way we do that is we can download a template, which I'm going to go to here. And the template has, let me just open this up. It's just a sheet, a spreadsheet that has the name, username, and password requests for this, and we can kind of fill this out. So let me make this a bit bigger so everybody can see it. So what I'm going to do is just create 3 names here. I'm going to say Abby, Michael, I guess, and Celia or something. Okay, those are the names of the people. I'm going to call this player 001, and I'll make the password the same. And then I'm going to just, you know, do it the same here for 2 and 3. So there we go. So that's going to work. Now I'm going to go ahead and save this. Let me save this in my folder here. You know, I'll do this. I'll save this on the desktop. So I'll call this employee multiplayer assignments. Okay, there we go. So I've got that saved. And now what I need to do is upload that to my account. So let me just do it this way. Oh, no, I can't do it that way. Let me do it this way. Okay, so go to desktop. There's the multiplayer assignments. Let me open that up. And now what you can see is it's uploaded these players with these names in it. And player 1 is Abby, player 2 is Michael, player 3 is Celia. So now I have the players in. And you can see they're all players in this game, but there's still a problem. And the problem is that the computer or Epicenter doesn't know what roles to assign to these players. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go to multiplayer assignments. And then what it does is it recognizes these 3. And you can see here this warning symbol that means that these 3 players are currently unassigned. So let me go ahead and just push the green assign button, and that will automatically assign the players to the different roles. So we have the 3 players assigned, and if I wanted to, I could go in and move them around and things like that, but I'm happy with this assignment for now. And now I have the players set in correctly. So let me go here then, and then I'm going to copy this link address for running the project. And I'm going to do the same technique I did a moment ago, which is to go to different screens here and log in. Actually, let me do this first. Let me log out of this one. Just and I'm going to log in over here, and then I can do the log. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to just repeat this for the other roles here. Okay. I don't have to necessarily log out, but just to, I think it gets confusing if I have multiple things open at the same time. So that's the second one, and then the third one is this one here. And we'll put in this URL. And now what I need to do is put in the usernames and things. So I have player 1, which I'll do here. I'll do player 1, and we can log in. And there we are in the simulation. I'm going to go to player 2 over here. So I'll just do this and change that to 2 and log in. And here I have player 3. And I'll log in here. Okay, so I've got the 3 players logged in now. And I can see my initial screen, and I can go to the dashboard and see some results from the simulation, kind of how things are working out right now. And I can go to decisions, and I can experiment with changing my decisions. And everybody's starting off, as we saw in our model. Let me go back to the model here, at 1,500. But now I can edit that price decision. I can say, let's say for player 3, they're going to charge a bit more for their things. I'm going to submit that. So Celia now has submitted, right? And we're waiting on the other 2 now. So Abby and Michael. Let me go to the other ones here, and I'll go to decisions. And I'm going to go ahead and have a lower price for player 1. And so that's Celia, Abby. I guess Abby submitted for that one. Okay, and then for the last one here, I'm going to go to decisions, and I'll do a much higher price for player 2. So submit that. And now everybody's submitted, and the market shares have changed, and the sales have changed as a consequence. This last one I submitted had the highest price, so they have the lowest market share, and their sales have gone down over time. And we can kind of continue the game round by round to do that. So you get a little bit of a sense for how that works. You know, round by round. If I can submit again, it's going to, you know, kind of start that process over for the other players. So let me just quickly do that. You know, in this one, what I'll do is I'll drop the price a lot. Okay, and then I have one more to do here, I think, with this one. And this one should get all 3 to advance again. Nope, I forgot one. Let's see, who did I forget? No, that one's done. It must be, no, it's not here. There we go. Okay, so this one I need to submit. There we go. Okay, so now it advances for the new decision. Oh wow, someone's really dominating there. I had a very low price for player B there, but anyway, get a sense for how this particular game works. All right, so as a next step, what I want to do is show you a little bit around how the facilitator pages work. So let me go to that as a next bit in here. The facilitator pages are additional pages that we can build into our interface. So I go back to the interface builder. And from here, what I want to do is create an interface. I'm going to go to the facilitator interface screen. And on the screen, then what I want to do, I can rename it for a new thing. And I think that's a really useful technique here, is to change this to facilitator. Actually, this is pretty good. Facilitator multiplayer. And I can add a new image here if I want to. I'm going to skip that for now. And then I can go back to these interpages. And this, because we're using these templates, what it's doing is it's kind of outlining everything that we'd want to have in here. So I can have class results page that show my class results. I can monitor teams to see how far they are in the sim. I can also advance all teams if I want to do that. If I don't want the players to submit, but I want the facilitator to advance round by round, you can do it from here. Do class settings and things like that. So starting off with class results, let's go there and let's add in some results into the simulation. So what I might want to do is add additional columns, and I could have, I want to maybe show the 3 cumulative profits. So I'm going to say a cumulative profit, and let's shorten this up a little bit. Let's just say cum profit. And then the variable I want to select here is cumulative, is cumulative profit for A. And then number format will be like this. I guess that's fine. And then I want to add another column, which is going to be B cumulative profit. And then I want to do the same here, cumulative profit for B till current step. And then, of course, I need C cumulative profit, which will be cumulative profit. Again, I have to look up that variable for C till current step. And I want to also format these in the same way. Let's do that. Okay, there we go. So now I've got other data that I can show in here as the simulation is running. And as I said, you kind of get for free, I get my monitor teams. I can also do class settings, by the way. So something I might want to do, if you want to think about our model at the beginning here, one of the things I wanted to do in here was to have this price sensitivity. And maybe as a facilitator, I want to change this as the simulation is progressing, right? So we've kind of played around with this at the beginning when we were working on the model. And what I can do is add a decision type here where maybe I put in a text input where I set the price sensitivity. So I'm going to say price sensitivity. And this is going to affect all players in all worlds, so, or rather all worlds in all the class and things like that. So I can go here and look up price sensitivity as a model variable, and then that can be set here. And that one I'm going to set as a percentage. I think that's probably the best way to look at that. And everything else is kind of set up. And you can see it kind of looks like the interface that we created a little bit ago for the marketing simulation. So that's enough to get started. Let me go ahead and save that as my, oops, I misspelled player up here. That's just a little too messy for me. I'm going to have to go back and fix that. So if I go to global settings, excuse me, pages, header, footer settings, I'm going to change this to multiplayer. There we go. And save that. Okay, so now let's go back to our project homepage. So I have created this new facilitator page, but I have no way to log into it yet. So what I need to do is go back to my group and create a new login that's not a user, but is the facilitator of this particular class that happens to have only one world in it with 3 players. So I'm going to go ahead and go to add end users. And in this case, I'll just invite one by one. And I'll use this Forio Fac1. I'm going to use that as my name here. I'm going to go ahead and add invite users. And what it does is it asks who it is. I'm going to say it's me, it's Michael Bean. And the password is going to be put in here. And then I'm going to change this one to facilitator. This is really the key thing that we need to do with this, is switch that to facilitator and then create user. And so now what you can see is I've got a 4th person in here who's the facilitator who can look at results for the class. And this person so far has never logged in, and we want to go ahead and try that one out. So let me go ahead and copy the link address, and I'm going to go to my see those 3. I gotta go to this 4th player here, and I'll paste this in for my electric bike company. And now I need to log in as that player. So I have to go back and remind myself what the username is. There it is. Let me put that in. And now if I log in, I'm logging in at the same account as the players, but I'm going in as a facilitator. And I can see now the multiplayer setup for the facilitator, kind of everything running here and stuff. And then I'm going to be able to kind of set things up and change results for the class and things like that as I progress. All right. So the last thing I thought would be kind of interesting to share here is something around how how you can create different pages based on the login for the learner. So not every case do you want everything to be the same for each player. And that's kind of how we built our interface right now. There's a very popular simulation that we have, which is Everest. Is a multiplayer simulation. And in that one, what we want to have is different information available for different players. So let's imagine in this one, we want to have the same thing. And what we want to do is we want to have unique information that's available to each of the players. Let's just do player A for a starting point for today. So let me show you how to do that. The way we can do that is, first off, we're going to create a unique page. And this page could be anything. It could have unique data on it. I could create a spreadsheet or a graph or something like that. Or I could just do a simple text page. For now, I'll just do a simple text page just to kind of keep it moving along. And I'll say this is secret information info for player A. Okay, so that's going to be my page. And I'm not going to do anything other than this in here right now. So that's good enough for this. All right, so we've got the secret information for player A in my new page. And if I go back to my pages here, this is the text page 1 that I've created. And now what I need to do is go to navigation settings and add this into my navigation so that the players can see this. And the way I'm going to handle that so it's only available for player A is to do this conditional editing. So I'm going to show condition editor. And what that does is it allows me to add conditionals that control whether or not something's available. So I'm going to add a new navigation item. I'm going to call this item player A info. And this is like unique information to player A. I'm going to link that to the new page that I created. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say show if user role is exactly A. Okay? So now I've got that in there. And I'm going to move this up. I don't want it to appear at the bottom, but I want it to appear kind of right after the intro. I think that's the best place for it. So I'll move that up one more. So now we have that in that page there. And that's it. So let me go ahead and save this now. And now if I go back to person 2, and I need to refresh the page to show this, let me see here. Oh, I'm in the wrong one. Let me, okay, so that's obviously not player A. I forgot who's assigned to whom. We'll find it here by refreshing. Okay. There we go. So player 3 is player A in this game. So you can see player 3 has player A info. Player 2 does not, and player, the player 1 does. I'm getting, so you can see how that now is only visible to the person who's assigned player A. We can confirm that too if we go back to our Sims homepage here to see the results of that. So let's go back here and we can see for our webinar here that person logged in as Celia, who's player 3, is in role A. So that's why we saw that on that third page here. Or yeah, this is the third page here. Here we go. All right, very good. All right, to wrap up today, what I want to do is just talk a little bit about using Excel in this tool. For Excel, you should name ranges in your Excel spreadsheet, as I showed you, to reference them in your interface. The other thing that you do need in multiplayer games when you're using Excel specifically is a time range and a step cell in your spreadsheet. So just to remind you, in our spreadsheet here, where those appear is there's this step cell. This cell is named step. That's what we mean by that. And there's also this time range here that's named time that appears in here as well. So those two things are required in every multiplayer, turn-based multiplayer simulation in that's built with Excel. So if you do those two things, you should be in good shape. And the rest of this, everything else on this page is sort of optional depending on the design of your simulation. I did want to point out additional resources that are needed for running this. One thing that is required, unlike, we have free accounts that are available for Epicenter where you can try out things. The constraint with the free accounts is that you can't have login. So you can make your simulation public only in the free accounts. So you will need a Forio Epicenter subscription for building a multiplayer game. You can kind of get started with it, I guess, a little bit in the free accounts, but in order to kind of get it working, as we've kind of shown today, you need to advance to the multiplayer subscription. You can find out more information about the subscriptions on our website, and you can also handle the buy a multiplayer or a subscription through the Epicenter itself. Other things that could be useful for kind of helping you when you're building and you need additional resources on there is our support forum. So let me show you where that is. If you go to back here to Epicenter, oops, wrong thing again. There we go. You go to here, you can see support forum, and if you click on it, you'll see different people that are asking questions about things, and we have lots of comments in here, and this is a good place. And people are pretty responsive, I think, in terms of answering questions around anything you have regarding your model. And then in documentation, you can go here as well, and it will give you advice on how to set up and run multiplayer simulations, some of which we've covered today during our webinar. Lastly, we have various webinars online. We'll have a version of this webinar that will be available after it's over today. And you can also do things like purchase coaching from Forio. So one of the things we offer is blocks of hours that are available if you need help, if you want us or someone else to kind of help you kind of assemble this. We have these coaching hours that are available, and we call that Forio Fast Break. And you can buy them in blocks of 20, 40, or 80 hours. So that's it in terms of the resources are available. And we think we have about 5 minutes left or so for questions. And Raymond, have we had any questions today that people need answered?
Yes. So the first one is, how much does it cost for a subscription for Forio Epicenter?
Okay, so the question was, it's just asking the question around or mentioning that you need a Forio Epicenter for building these models, and say, how much does the subscription cost for Forio Epicenter? You can find that on our website. Let's see if I can pull that up here. Go here. If you go to forio.com, and then you go to products, and then Epicenter, and you can go to, on here, there's a pricing link, and you can click on that pricing and you can see the details of it. So here are the different pricing levels. The easiest way to get started is this one that's at $477 per year, or $47 per month. And you can use that for building a multiplayer game. It will be limited to 40 end users or 40 players in the world, but that's the starting point. It kind of goes up from there. And again, if you want to find that information, just go to our website, Epicenter Pricing. Okay, Raymond, any other questions?
So one person asks, is there any consideration for making Google Sheets available for Epicenter?
So the question is there any way to use Google Sheets instead of Excel for Epicenter? Yes, absolutely. It's not directly using Google Sheets, because what we want, one of the objectives of Epicenter is to keep the model completely private. Like, even if you make your interface public, the model that runs the simulation should not be available to end users, because usually that's the intellectual property of the modeler. That's like often really valuable to the author who's created it, and we want to make sure that's not shared in the outside world. So if you wanted to, you could do the same modeling with Google Sheets, and it would, it'd work the same way. Let me just show you a little bit of how that would work here. So let me go to Google Drive here. Oh, you know what? I'm probably not logged in. You know what? The way to do this is go here, and let me just create a new link here. Okay, so we go to drive.google.com, and what I'll do is I'll create a new Google Sheet here, and I could do the same thing here as I did before, right? So I could create like time and step and so forth, and then I would have to spell step correctly. And so on. So I could do, this could be 2019 and 2020 and so forth, and it would kind of advance through here, right? Obviously, I'm not going to build this whole thing out right now, but you get a little bit of sense for that. And then you could put the step in here, and then you would have your model variables here, like you could have profit, and it would be, whatever. It kind of like it would do something over time. And then you would do the same process of naming your ranges. So you can do the named ranges in here too with that. And then what you would do at the end, instead of keeping this in Google Sheets, you would say download as Excel. And if you download as Excel, then you can just bring that into Epicenter the same way. So it's a bit of a workaround, because ultimately what you're doing is just creating an Excel spreadsheet, but you can certainly use Google Sheets to build your model this way. And I don't think that there's any kind of capabilities that, you sort of have that sort of same range of capabilities that are available here for running that. All right, any other questions?
What other finished multiplayer simulations does Forio sell?
So there's a question around what other multiplayer simulations are available for sale. I guess these are for simulations that are finished simulations, so simulations that we have available in our catalog. So let me show you that quickly. Yeah, if you like, we showed this marketing simulation at the beginning. If you go to forio.com/store, you can see this catalog. And you see ready to run simulations, and there's sort of different categories of these here. And one of the category types we have is player types. You can do single player or multiplayer. If you click on multiplayer, you get the range of all the multiplayer simulations that we have in our catalog. And there's quite a few, not surprisingly. And some of the most popular ones here are the multiplayer games. This is the one that we ran today, this surgical robotics simulation. Well, we're right at the top of the hour, so I'm going to leave it at that. If there are unanswered questions, Raymond and I will respond to them after the webinar is over. Thank you very much, and have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.